Hi friends! So, have you been following me at all lately? I went to the 2018 Health, Healing, and Happiness Weekend Shindig in Las Vegas at the Tuscany Suites. Took a good amount of notes. I'm going to read all of them for you right now. And I'll add my own lib as I go across them and who knows what else. I haven't really cleaned them up too much, but I got a lot of great stuff here I'm happy to just give to you and jot down notes as I'm going through all this stuff. Maybe write down the timestamp so that you can go back over it later. And whatever I share with you that can help you out in some way to do with health, healing, and happiness, please have at it and share it with other people too. And I have to include this little disclaimer. I'm not giving you anything to undermine your healthcare professionals. So take responsibility for your own health, and everything I'm sharing with you here is going to be what I got from these other doctors, including treatments that they prescribe. So it's not coming from me, it's coming from them, and I think it's really valuable. I personally am modifying things that I do, practicing what they teach, and I always get good results from that. Hey Marianne, hey Jody, hey Tessa, Hannah, everyone. And my website, by the way, is tombirkenmeyer.com, just like it's spelled here on social media, tombirkenmeyer.com. Hi, Deanne. Hi, Maureen. And if you want to see future health, healing, and happiness events to attend them in person, like I do, just Google Health, Healing, Happiness, Las Vegas. It'll come right up in the search results. It's pretty cool. Hi, Brenda, Karen, everyone else. Okay, so let's start. Health, Healing, and Happiness 2018. My first set of notes are from Dr. Joel Fuhrman, a medical doctor who turned to plant-based nutrition to treat his patients. So he's probably blacklisted by the medical community now, but very smart man, encyclopedic knowledge. So here we go. The first thing Dr. Joel Fuhrman said when he took the stage is, when you see your doctor, pay very close attention. Write down every word your doctor says, and then when you get home, rip it all up and flush it down the toilet. And he's a doctor. So I wonder if he was also talking about himself. I don't know. Drugs are leading causes of death in the country, and pharmaceuticals are toxic. So he's talking about drugs prescribed by the pharmaceutical, or by medical doctors, made by the pharmaceutical industry. He's also talking about drugs that are prescribed, and these are known side effects. These aren't drugs that are being taken illegally or being taken outside of how they've been prescribed, and they're still the leading cause of death in this country. It's important to live in a manner to avoid the need for additional substances. The collusion between the drug, food, and medical industry is designed to barely keep you alive. You're not supposed to be taking things that have pharmacological effects, whether they come from the natural or pharmaceutical world. Pardon me one moment. I'll grab that. Live feeds, that's what happens. Okay, so he made a really good point here. You're not supposed to be taking things that have a pharmacological effect, whether they come from the natural or pharmaceutical world. And sometimes I see hippies make the argument, well, it's nature made, so it's fine. So it could be smoking weed, which, by the way, I'm totally in favor of legalizing because I like a little thing called freedom. One moment. This might be the last one. All right, I'll just keep this here so I can hang up on them immediately. I'll call them all back later. So-called hippies will sometimes say they take this or that because it occurs in the natural world, therefore it's fine. I think it's a lazy way of thinking. And that's sort of the point that he was making. At least that's what I interpret him from saying what he said here about you're not supposed to have anything that has a pharmacological effect, whether they come from the natural or the pharmaceutical world. And that's a great point. Fast food genocide. He talked a lot about fast food genocide, not just fast food that you get, fast food when you go out to eat at fast food places, but anything that's absorbed into the bloodstream very quickly is how he's defining fast food. Something that you eat gets absorbed quickly, insulin spikes quickly, excessive amounts of insulin, and I'm going to start reading about that now. This is really interesting. And I see very few people are interested in this. Hardly anybody here watching. But for those of you that are interested in this, congratulations, you're against the mainstream and the masses. So I appreciate you very much that are actually into this stuff. He asked the question, is the word genocide too strong of a word here when describing fast food genocide? So what is the only proven methodology to slowing aging and pushing the envelope to human health and longevity? Moderate caloric restriction and an environment of micronutrient excellence. Macronutrients are proteins, carbs, and fats, which have calories. Micronutrients are vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients, and have 0 calories. The foods most of us eat are not high in micronutrients. Micronutrients are what equips the body to fight off cancer and disease, slow aging, and maximize longevity with excellent brain and blood health. Most Americans, including most vegans, are micronutrient deficient primarily because they are not eating enough green vegetables. Green vegetables have the most micronutrients. The food with the biggest effect on wiping out dementia are dark leafy greens with the most protection against dementia. What's the food with the closest association to wiping out heart attacks and strokes? Dark leafy greens, again. How about cancer? Dark leafy greens, again. If you don't eat enough dark leafy greens, you are in trouble. Your body is designed to work on greens. Reversing DNA damage is dependent on dark leafy greens. So I think he made his point. Get more dark leafy greens, right? So Dr. Fuhrman's health equation is H equals N over C. That stands for health expectancy equals nutrients divided by calories. Oil gets absorbed into the bloodstream so quickly that it will be digested before you eat anything else. In other words, high calories with 0 micronutrients without curbing an appetite. So it, in effect, sets the stage to overeat extra calories than you would have otherwise, and in foods that are micronutrient deficient, which speeds up the aging process and makes the body more vulnerable to disease. You can't eat calories without any nutrients and expect not to be hurting yourself. That was new to me. I knew oil was absorbed quickly into the bloodstream, but I didn't know that it was digested and absorbed so quickly before you could eat anything else, which obviously is going to cause you to overeat each and every time. So Dr. Fuhrman goes on to lecture, the standard American diet, he calls it SAD, Standard American Diet, SAD, design. He says, he posed the question jokingly, so, is it designed by ISIS? So the standard American diet is 54% processed foods, 32% animal products without any fiber, insignificant micronutrients, and highly inflammatory. Only 11% veggies, fruits, nuts, and beans, and about 4% whole grains. So what is fast food? 6 characteristics. Not just fast food restaurants, just typical convenience foods that you can access fast. The characteristics, 6 of them, are number 1, digested and absorb rapidly into the bloodstream. Number 2, multiple synthetic ingredients. Yummy. Number 3, calorically dense. Number 4, nutritionally barren. That's a deadly combination. Calorically dense but nutritionally barren. Anyway, number 5, highly flavored with artificial ingredients, and number 6, high in salt and sugar. Fast foods absorb so rapidly into the bloodstream, it's similar to cocaine and heroin. Ooh. It's highly addicting. Narcotics stimulate dopamine in the brain the same way these kind of calories rapidly absorb into the bloodstream. You can't eat just one French fry or one scoop of ice cream. You have to keep going. It revolves around being stimulated. Why is eating chicken like eating a bagel? Why is eating a chicken like eating a bagel? Tanya says this is breaking up. Well, hopefully this is going to be okay. I'll maybe read it again another day if it's acting up right now. So why is chicken like eating a bagel? Thanks for that, Tanya. Neither have a significant source of micronutrients. Common denominator. The 2 raw foods that lower glycemic foods the most are onions and scallions and dark leafy greens. I'm going to say that again because that's hugely important. The 2 raw foods that lower other glycemic foods the most, so in other words a residual effect, are going to be onions and scallions and dark leafy greens. The 2 cooked foods that lower glycemic loads are beans and mushrooms. I'm going to say that whole part again because that is so hugely important. The two raw foods, so don't cook these, that lower glycemic foods the most are onions or scallions and dark leafy greens. The two cooked foods that lower glycemic loads the most are beans and mushrooms. So cook beans and mushrooms, and onions and scallions and dark leafy greens always eat raw. And that'll lower the glycemic load more potently than anything else. If you eat mushrooms raw, you lose the anti-cancer benefits. The healthiest diets in the world have a little bit of cooked food in them. They are not 100% raw. Canned beans are fine. Tomato products are not okay canned because of a lining they use in the cans to protect the can from being eaten away by natural acids in the tomatoes. That's one of the things I actually remembered without having to write it down, because I love canned beans. Canned tomatoes I could go either way, but now I know to stay away from them because they're highly acidic. Basically, he went on to say, I don't see this written in my notes, but I remember, anything that's acidic, like a tomato, do not get it canned, because to protect the can from being eaten away by the acidic food, they have to line it with something that's harmful to human health. He said the name of what they line it with, but I don't remember. But beans are not acidic, so canned beans are fine. And they're really inexpensive too, and so incredibly healthy, as I'll go on to read to you more. So continuing along with Dr. Fuhrman's, the notes I took from his lecture. Let's see here. To make glycemic load on foods even higher, add oil to your diet. Ooh, no wonder there's so much diabetes in this country. The Southern diet with deep fried foods is the most dangerous in America. Highest stroke and heart attack rate in the world. Just one serving of French fries per week, low, moderate, is more than enough to increase chances significantly of different cancers. I found that to be interesting because that's basically the Bible Belt. And in their faith, their body is their temple, and they trash their temple more than any other fragmentation of people in the entire planet. They're such hypocrites in that way. And maybe a lot of them just don't realize it. And they mean, well, who knows? But the end result is massive hypocrisy. And so that was an interesting observation to me. Fast food versus slow food. Now we're moving towards the solution. Caloric duration in the bloodstream. Beans and nuts come into the bloodstream at about 4 calories per minute. That's awesome. Oil and white flour come into the bloodstream at about 50 calories per minute. That's a big difference. Clogs up insulin receptors. The pancreas has to work harder to produce more insulin to bring blood sugars back down. Smiling and laughing makes you live longer. So do that every day. That's free. I thought beans were cheap. Smiling and laughing is cheaper than beans. It's free. Carcinogens in fast food and processed meats. Oh, a list of them. A list of carcinogenic and fast foods and processed meats. Sodium benzenate, sodium nitrate, nitroso compounds, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, heterocyclate something, and arsenic. Ooh, there's arsenic in them. Nice. Foods with strongest link to cancer. The foods with the strongest link to cancer is processed meats, barbecue meats, dairy. Dairy is part of our government-sponsored food paradigm. It's like our government is trying to kill us. Fried foods and white foods. The brain is under attack. 2 servings doubles the risk of depression. It's talking about foods that absorb quickly into the bloodstream, fast foods. The brain is under attack. 2 servings double risk of depression. Fried foods, sweets and processed meats, commercial baked goods, burgers, sausage and pizza. 100 years ago, we had 1 out of 20 people mentally ill. Today, it's 1 out of 5 due to these kinds of foods, and the media does not report it. Commercial baked goods and the truth about how they attack the brain is not being talked about, so we have to educate ourselves and get into self-care. I took massive notes on that whole concept of self-care and taking personal responsibility from what I attended last year. Really great notes, but man, that really touches home on it. Another thing, this I didn't get from the conference, but another one I went to. The number one marketing tool by Big Food that makes all these foods that's so bad for us is willful consumer ignorance. It's not media, it's not commercials and so on, though they're powerful, but it's just willful consumer ignorance. In other words, people that do not self-educate and take self-care and self-responsibility. So people that are not into those things practice willful consumer ignorance. And so that is the greatest marketing tool by all of these big food people that produces these processed fast foods that are killing us. So it's up to us to, I guess, wake up. That's the big phrase these days, wake up. So moving right along. Parents lower their children's intelligence. Ooh. Parents lower their children's intelligence. Fresh fruits and veggies in a, can't read my notes. Fresh fruits and vegetables in fancy and, that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, fresh fruits and vegetables and intelligence, I guess, go hand in. I have to clean up my notes. I can't even read that. Obviously, fresh fruits and vegetables are going to be much healthier than all those other foods I just listed off that go to brain damage and brain trauma and irregularities in behavior that kids have, and depression and all the suicidal thoughts and the suicides that are spiking in this country. A lot of that is linked to the food that we're eating, and the media doesn't talk about it. Politicians don't talk about it because they're bribed by the makers of these foods. So parents lower their children's intelligence by feeding them foods that are overprocessed and absorb quickly into the bloodstream and produce excessive amounts of insulin secretion that literally, by objective measurements, it lowers children's intelligence. And I get it, most parents don't consciously do this and they're not aware of it. That's why people like Dr. Fuhrman are out there talking about it, because we have to tell people. Let's see here. Fast foods equals poor school performance and lower IQ. Regular consumers of fast food have the worst outcomes in brain health and intelligence. Fast consumption foods is also linked to autism, and autism has been on the rise for a very long time now, in conjunction with the rise of fast, convenience, heavily processed foods. Fast food genocides means we weaken the genes through generations. Fast food drug addiction and a crime. So he drew a link between crime, all kinds of behavioral problems, and brain health to fast absorbable foods. Children fed candy before the age of 10 are more likely to be involved in violent crime or drug-related offenses. No other variable, poverty, education, lack of parents or bad parenting, or anything else showed such a robust correlation. So that's quite a statement to make. Children fed candy before the age of 10, I guess when their body and their brain is still developing, shows a more robust correlation between that behavior and going on later in life to commit violent crimes and for drug addiction than even bad parenting and living in poverty and lack of education. That's quite a statement. So the urban poor are on fast food. So obviously when you go into poorer areas, fast food is everywhere. You go into more high affluent areas, the fast food is not there, and the grocery stores are of better quality foods, more organics and things like that. And that's something I think everybody has pretty much observed. So food deserts and vulnerable communities. 47% more high blood pressure, 80% increased risk of fatal stroke, twice as likely to die from heart attacks, double the risk of developing dementia, 4 times likely to have kidney failure. So he's showing objective measurements that show that these places, the poor neighborhoods where the food is nutritionally poor, there's really bad, dire consequences and outcomes compared to the more affluent communities where the food supply is typically a lot healthier. Obesity and diabetes by zip code. So I guess they study that by zip code. Examining the impact of food deserts on public health in Chicago. Those who lived in food deserts areas were the most obese and diabetic. Duh. Let's see here. Years of potential life lost. Diabetics in these areas showed an average of 45 years of life lost per person. Damn, that's quite a statement. Diabetics in these areas, these food deserts, these poor areas where the food is nutritionally poor, diabetics in these areas showed an average of 45 years of life lost per person. That's absurd. This country is not supposed to be about trying to kill people through poisonous food supplies. Nutritional deficiency even played a role back during white supremacy and Jim Crow laws. Wow, those are quite some dots to connect. Heroin is commonly a gateway drug to fast food. Damn. They quit the drug, and to fill in that void, they commonly go to fast food because it has the same type of effect on the body. Wow. High protein and death. Everyone's saying, I gotta get more protein. Protein is more growth promoting than fat and carbs, including cancer growth. The more animal protein you eat, fourfold increases in cancer death. 75% increase in overall deaths. Ages the body prematurely. Best protein comes from nuts, beans, seeds, and vegetables. Animal protein literally kills. Something to do with, okay, this is a little note I made because I couldn't keep up even typing wise. Something to do with IGF-1 protein, so you can Google that to learn about IGF-1 protein. I couldn't write fast enough to catch what he said about it. I literally typed that in my notes. Salting away our future. Salt is a carcinogenic, causes microvascular hemorrhaging before it starts to raise blood pressure. Salt damages your health so much that by the time your blood pressure is high, it's already caused so much damage. High blood pressure or not, salt does damage. Eat a diet naturally containing salt, the body functions better and less likely for a stroke. Now, he didn't say this, but I happen to know that celery is a great source of natural salt where you don't have to add it. In fact, celery looks like a bone, snaps like a bone. Turns out it's a superfood for the bones. And it's got the exact sodium content ratio and proportion that the bones have. And there's a bunch of other physical characteristics that it shares with the bone. So celery is a great place of natural salt. And I also thought this was interesting because people typically don't notice there's a problem until after they have high blood pressure. And what he's saying here is that salt damages your health so much that by the time your blood pressure is high, it's already caused so much damage. So people think they're fine, they're really not. So it's best to just cut salt out of the diet or don't add salt to anything. And that's something I've been focusing on for a few years now when I first learned that. So I get most of my salt is just naturally occurring now. Good thing. Let's see here. The next note I took. Nuts and seeds. Oh, these are great. Nuts and seeds bind to fat in the body. And obviously, if it binds to the fat in the body, it's going to pass it through into the toilet. So whenever I hear of somebody getting nutritional advice, about weight loss or cleansing, and they're told a common one is to cut beans out of your diet. Whenever I hear that, I listen to nothing else that person has to say about nutrition. I really don't. Or if somebody says dairy is good for you, I hear nothing else they say about nutrition. So beans, nuts, seeds, binds to fat in the body, pulls it through. If you're on any kind of a weight loss plan or cleansing plan or detoxification plan, beans, nuts, seeds, it's got to be a staple, man. Let's see here. Next note I took. You can naturally caloric resist just by eating right. Isn't that something? So what he's saying there is you struggle to resist calories because you want to lose weight. But if you eat right, you can naturally caloric restrict without forcing yourself to, just by eating right. And we're going to get more into that here soon. He's not going to leave us in the mess. He gives us a solution, believe me. So nuts and seeds, 1 serving a day, raw nuts and seeds, by the way. They decrease heart attacks, they decrease strokes, and reduce cancer risks. Eat nuts and seeds with dark leafy greens and other vegetables because they increase the absorption of the nutrients. So that's a pretty big, awesome tip. So when you're eating these nuts and seeds, eat them with dark leafy greens. Pairing, you can look at pairing foods on Google and see which foods to pair. There's certain foods you pair together and it increases a nutrient absorption because you are not what you eat, you are what you absorb. So nuts and seeds with dark leafy greens get more medicinal benefits. Don't eat nuts and seeds with fruits. Yeah, and then there's others you don't want to pair. I don't remember why, but there's reasons. So don't eat nuts and seeds with fruits. Eat them with vegetables. And don't snack on them. Eat them with your vegetables. Hope I made my point, or Dr. Fuhrman's point. G-BOMBs. I've made several videos about G-BOMBs because it's the neatest, simplest little acronym, and it's so deeply useful. G-BOMBs is an acronym that stands for greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. And you get those in your diet every day. So, hung up on him. It happens. Call him back later. So G-BOMBs, these are foods for permanent weight loss and optimal health, and the most powerful foods to prevent cancer. That spectrum of G-BOMBs. Greens, beans, onions. It's getting annoying. Greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. Doctors are dangerous. That's a quote from Dr. Fuhrman. Mushrooms do not allow the body to grow fat or cancer cells. Wow. How many of you would like to know that? Well, now you do, because you're smart enough to watch this video. Mushrooms do not allow the body to grow fat or cancer cells. Remember, mushrooms are one of the two foods, I talked about this earlier, one of the two foods that are the most powerful when they're cooked. It was mushrooms and, I can't remember the other one. I'll have to go back in my video and look, but mushrooms and something else. And the most powerful foods, maybe it was beans, had to have been mushrooms and beans. And the two most powerful foods to eat raw for lowering glycemic loads and getting the medicinal benefits are going to be onions, scallions, and dark leafy greens. So eat those raw. Mushrooms, cook them, but not overcook. Just saute them quickly. And you turn on all the anti-cancer benefits. So get your mushrooms every day. And here's something I learned from Don Tolman. This is a little sidebar here. Fuhrman probably knows this as well, but only so much time to talk. Take a cup full of mushrooms, put them out under the sun for an hour, absorb direct sunlight, absorb all the vitamin D from the sun, then you eat them, and so an extra added benefit. Try that out. An all raw diet, speaking of raw, does not give you the nutrient exposure that you need. So 100% raw diets are not the healthiest, but most of the food should be raw. Beans and mushrooms are just two examples among very few examples of food that's best when it's cooked. Let's see here. He posed a question that had an obvious duh answer. It was, do you want to have your foot cut off and go into kidney failure, or do you want to reclaim your life? In amputations, that is big business, and that's not a rare scenario, man. So that's a very legit question. That's not hyperbole or anything. Do you want to have your foot cut off and go into kidney failure, or do you want to reclaim your life? And Dr. Fuhrman's website, by the way, is drfuhrman.com. D-R-F as in Frank, U-R-H-M as in Mary, A-N as in Nancy.com. D-R-F-U-R-H-M-A-N.com. He's also got another website called nutritionalresearch.org. Common spelling, nutritionalresearch.org. Okay, so we're going to go into another lecture that he gave us. There's so many nuggets of very useful knowledge here. So I hope you guys are getting something out of it. I wish more people were into this stuff, as evident by the very low viewership on a video like this. But to continue on, for those of you that are into this, let's go. So the next lecture yeah, I know, boo, right, Cynthia, on those people. And here's what it comes down, in my observation. Most people are just completely complicit and obedient to the status quo, business as usual. And business as usual is about keeping you barely alive for as long as possible, because they need your obedient dollars and they need your obedient stewardship at your workplace of employment, and to be sick and to drag out the life of the human vegetables for as long as possible. And that's the way that most people live. And there's very few people that are interested in self-education, self-care, taking personal responsibility, and opening up the brain into a rich and creative process to find solutions, rather than a poor, lazy one that's just completely bent and obedient towards the will of business as usual that just wants to poison them and keep them barely alive. It's just so stupid. It's so self-sabotaging. But it really makes me, that wide difference, that wide spectrum of difference really makes me appreciate the few that are into self-care and self-education and all these kinds of things. So moving right along, that was a little sidebar observation by yours truly. Day 2 of Dr. Fuhrman, conquering food addiction for permanent weight loss. Wow, maybe I'll do a separate standalone video just for this one, because that's something everyone wants to know about. Day 2, conquering food addiction for permanent weight loss. Let's go. The neighborhoods of gun violence and muggings takes less lives than the neighborhoods of stress and unhealthy eating. And what does the media focus more on? They're both important, but the media obviously focuses more on the thing that takes less lives and so on. Your body has already been genetically designed to live to be 100 years old without disease or mental illness or needs for medication. And most people are on medications before they even hit 30 years old, let alone 100. How sad is that? We've been genetically designed not to crave or overeat or to crave genetically modified foods. We are helped by modalities that cannot be received by the medical profession. Wow, that came from a medical doctor. 2 types of nutrients that we get from food. Macronutrients, which are proteins, carbs, and fats. The more of these you consume in life, the shorter your lifespan. These are calories. Man, tell me that's not opposite of what mainstream is telling you, right? I'll read that again. Macronutrients, these are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. The more of these you consume in life, the shorter you're going to live. These are calories. Micronutrients are the other kinds of nutrients that we get from food. Micronutrients are the vitamins, the minerals, the phytochemicals. They have no calories. A lack of these nutrients allows the body to build up waste products, so we can't get rid of the toxins. We can't repair or heal ourselves. Cells begin to act funny, and this opens up the doors for all diseases because we're not getting enough micronutrients, but too many macronutrients. That's a big eye-opener, man. Holy shit. We eat a lot of calories, but not enough micronutrients. Most of our calories come from overly processed foods in the standard American diet. Overprocessed foods are chemically manipulated to make them addicting so they sell more and make more money. We eat too many animal products. They have no micronutrients except for iron. A lack of micronutrients makes you crave more calories. It's very hard to go on a diet to lose weight without enough micronutrients. Micronutrients make you feel fed and have 0 calories. Micronutrients make you feel fed and have 0 calories. So you can naturally resist taking in too many calories without feeling like you're deprived or going into hunger panics. Cancer is not genetic. Going through remains of humans from thousands of years ago, there were no instances of cancer except once in a blue moon. It's highly unusual for humans to have cancer. We were not designed to have it. It's a relatively new phenomenon in the history of the planet. So his health equation, I said this once before earlier, is health expectancy is equal to nutrients divided by calories. Just what he was saying before this. Get more micronutrients and less macronutrients so that you're getting more nutrition and less calories. Health expectancy equals nutrients over calories. We have a prerequisite to require green vegetables for our cells to function optimally, and less than 11% of our diet is vegetables of all colors, let alone the green ones. Glycemic load measures not how much glucose enters into the blood, but how fast it's absorbed into the blood. Different foods have different glycemic loads, or different absorption rates into the blood. When food is digesting and absorbed slowly, the body doesn't have to produce as much insulin to bring blood glucose back down to normal. Excessive amounts of insulin kills people prematurely. This is why it's important to focus on low glycemic foods. You get to have a normal, healthy lifespan. It's the doctor who shortens the lifespan of a diabetic by prescribing more insulin injections while not addressing their diet to eat better foods that require less insulin. Excessive insulin always releases dopamine from the brain, and over a period of time, it makes the dopamine insensitive. So you have to keep eating more food all the time or you won't feel well. Examples of high glycemic foods are white potatoes, white rice, white pasta, chocolate cake. Medium glycemic load examples are corn, brown rice, sweet potato, grapes, rolled oats, whole wheat, mangoes. Low glycemic examples are lentils, and this is what you want to focus on, low glycemic examples. They're lentils, green apples, kiwi, green peas, butternut squash, kidney beans, black beans, watermelon, oranges, etc. You can also Google low glycemic foods. Beans have the, one of my favorite foods, beans have the most slowly digestible starches. Beans. And the most fiber. And they're resistant to starch. Oh, I love that. And determines the bacteria activity in the intestinal tract. These are anti-diabetic. Beans are anti-cancerous. Beans are weight favorable. And beans have an anti-inflammatory effect. Oh, I love those beans, but don't ruin it with salt, sugar, and oil. By eating these foods regularly, your body will treat medium glycemic load foods as lower glycemic foods. So how wonderful is that little sidebar? Basically what he's saying there, beans have a special starch-resistant characteristic in that if you eat them regularly enough, then other foods that you eat, they will have a lower glycemic load impact on your body as well. So it has a residual effect. So beans, they just have to be part of a regular diet. That's pretty freaking cool. I learned that for the first time about a year ago. Blew my mind. So I like to continue to learn about it. However, if you eat too much fast-absorbing foods, the medium glycemic foods will be treated as high glycemic foods, which will burden the pancreas to excessive amounts of insulin that speed up the aging process and opens up the door to all diseases and weight gain. So take a medium glycemic food, for example. Let's see here. Beans that have slowly blah, blah, blah. Okay, sweet potato. Sweet potato is a medium glycemic food. You eat beans on a regular basis, it's going to turn the sweet potato into a low glycemic food for you. If you eat fast-absorbing foods on a regular basis, it's going to take that beautiful medium glycemic load sweet potato and turn it into a high glycemic food. So it can go both ways. So it's important to eat slowly digestible foods all the time, on a regular basis, right? And something like beans actually has a residual effect. So it's not just low glycemic, but it has a residual effect because it's starch resistant. So it'll turn the medium glycemic foods into a low glycemic food. Isn't that cool? Blah, blah, blah. Where was I at? The meals you don't eat, please get rid of benefits. Okay. Continuing right along. The meals you don't eat beans at, you get the benefit of those beans that you ate at other meals. Basically what I was describing. Same thing with mushrooms. They have a residual effect if eaten regularly. Ooh. When you eat oil, it blocks insulin receptors, so your pancreas has to produce more insulin. When you get fat, the fat going into the cells get in the way of insulin uptake. So now when you eat white potatoes, for example, your pancreas will create 10 times the insulin to bring back down blood glucose levels. It's impossible to be overweight when eating a natural whole foods diet. When eating oil and sugar or white flour, it creates a dopamine rush that makes you crave more oil and more sugars, and each time it dampens your dopamine receptors, which makes you crave more and more junk food each and every time. Same effect as cocaine on the brain, and if you stop, you go into withdrawals or a detoxification process. Too much animal protein creates nitrogenous waste that the body can't get rid of completely. So this waste is transferred by the liver into things like ammonia and sent to the brain along with sugar and goes toward depression, anger, violence, and overall psychotic behavior and thoughts. So he spent a lot of time, and he talked really fast. I couldn't type all that out. I got out what I could. But he spent a lot of time showing you empirical proof, evidence, data that shows a strong correlation between eating foods that absorb quickly into the bloodstream and processed foods and animal products. A strong correlation between eating those foods regularly and developing all sorts of mental disorders, whether it's dementia, Alzheimer's, or violent behaviors, or suicidal thoughts, and it's linked to high levels of depression in this country and suicide. And the media does not report on that whatsoever. So that's where it comes, and we have to come into play for ourselves. Be self-educated, get into self-care, and stop being so obedient to the business as usual that is of keeping people barely alive for as long as possible. And the real tragedy for business as usual is when you do die because they lose a perpetual customer. So they want to keep us barely alive for as long as possible. The media does not report on this stuff, so we have to be self-educated and take responsibility, self-care, and talk about it with each other. Being an obedient person that doesn't think about these things or has no curiosity to think about these things, that basically means you're going to live a life that's controlled and manipulated by business as usual. Moving right along from that little sidebar. I have a lot of sidebars. The secret formula for obesity. Obesity is basically you're eating sweeteners, you're eating salt, and you're eating oil. And that whole last, 10 minutes or so of this video, I read some incredible, powerful stuff explaining exactly how that works between salt, sweeteners, and oil, how it blocks insulin receptors and dopamine receptors, which means that you have to keep eating more and more and more, and your body has to secrete maybe 10 times as much insulin until you feel like you're well again. And in the meantime, when you're eating all that food, that kind of food, you're doing damage to your body in terms of opening the doors for all the different diseases and inflammation, and rapidly speeding up the aging process, because remember, the more you metabolize, the more quickly you absorb food into the bloodstream, the more excessive insulin your body creates, which means that you're speeding up the aging process and opening the doorways for every disease, every cancer, and inflammation. So stay away from sweeteners, salt, and oil. I've been saying this for years, actually. Sweeteners, I've been saying in some of my videos, swap out sweeteners, salt, and oil for herbs and spices. It's a game changer. And it's very anti-establishment to do that too. So how sweet is that? Fast food in America is designed to make you want to eat non-stop. Again, fast food meaning food that is fast, convenient, and absorbs very quickly into the bloodstream. Subcutaneous fat and visceral fat. He did a whole talk on this. I remember it was too fast and I didn't get too much written down, but I'll read to you what I have. Subcutaneous fat and visceral fat. Subcutaneous fat, you can see it's on your exterior. You can pinch it. Obviously, I don't have much, but you can pinch it. Where was I? Okay, and visceral fat is inside fat around your organs. So there's people that might look skinny, but they got the large amounts of visceral fat that is inside and around their organs, and skinny people die of heart attacks and strokes too because of that. Yo-yo diets puts on more visceral fat. Temporary weight loss offers no benefit. If you put it back on again, it just increases your visceral fat, which increases the likelihood of massive heart attack or stroke. Okay, so what I remember, I actually still remember more of this, so I'm glad I'm reading it this soon. But the visceral fat that's inside, the more dangerous fat, far more dangerous fat, it causes more heart attacks and strokes than the outside subcutaneous fat. So when people go on diets and they got that last 10, 20 pounds to lose, very few people will see it through and lose that last 10 to 20 pounds or whatever it is. And it's that last 10 to 20 pounds is where the visceral fat comes off. So most people will get to a certain point and then they'll stop and they'll put it back on. So in the meantime, that visceral fat is still there. They lost a lot of subcutaneous fat. The visceral fat is still there. But the visceral fat doesn't just stay there. Each time that you lose weight but you don't go to where you're supposed to be and then you put it back on, each and every time, it residually builds up more of that internal visceral fat. So if you're not going to see it through, if you're not going to be a finisher with your weight loss, then, and on some level what he's saying here is you're doing more damage than good, because you're loading on more visceral fat around your internal organs each and every time, which increases the likelihood of a massive heart attack or a stroke. And sadly in life, not just in health and weight loss, but in finances and just about everything else, most people are not finishers. Most people are quitters, unfortunately. That's the behavior of most people. So the few that are finishers, man, let it carry over to every aspect of your life, your financial goals, your health goals. Be a finisher, man. Get down to the weight that you're supposed to be, the body mass index and your blood panels and all that stuff, and get rid of that visceral fat. That's basically what he's saying here. Moving right along with the next note. Most people feel withdrawals, not so much hunger when they're not eating. The brain and taste buds will be recalibrated back to enjoying healthy food as much more than the bad food that you're used to. It may take weeks or months of withdrawals, but you have to go through it. Then once your brain and taste buds are back to nature and away from bad food, it's easy to stay on track for the rest of your life because now you enjoy healthy foods and the bad foods taste bad because you've successfully allowed time to pass to rewire your brain and taste palette back to nature. I've made several videos on that, so it's nice to see the doctor talk about that too. Most diets fail because they focus on reducing calories instead of addressing the micronutrient deficiencies. We've already talked a lot about that. Hunger is the secret to living a long, healthy life because it gives you a chronic feedback to eat when you need to eat to prevent muscle loss and maintain a healthy body weight. It's quite a statement. I'll read that one more time. Hunger is the secret to living a long, healthy life because it gives you a chronic feedback to eat when you need to eat to prevent muscle loss and maintain a healthy body weight. If you're never hungry, you're constantly in a state of overeating. 3 characteristics of true hunger. 1, a sensation in your throat. 2, increased salivation. 3, dramatically heightened taste sensation. Get rid of toxic hunger. So he makes an important nuance here. There's a difference between a true hunger, a healthy hunger, and a toxic hunger. And that's basically what he's telling us right here. So diets don't work. Seek volume and nutrients first. Remember, the nutrients are found in micronutrients, which have 0 calories. Animal protein, sugar, and caffeine feeds a toxic hunger. And a toxic hunger is going to be when you've gone too far and you do start metabolizing your own muscle tissue. So there's a balance there. And fat loss, I couldn't type fast enough, but I'm just going based on my memory. I remember him saying weight loss from fat primarily happens at the tail end of true hunger before you get into a toxic hunger. So at the tail end of a true hunger, your body is burning through fat for calories for your basal metabolic rate. But if you go too far into a toxic hunger, it stops burning fat. It goes into survival mode and it starts eating away at muscle tissue, cannibalizing basically on yourself. So recognize the difference. Let's see here. A nutritarian. Look up that diet. A nutritarian eats a variety of high nutrient plants, eats no empty calorie foods like sugar, sweeteners, white flour, processed foods, or fast foods, uses little or no oil, uses little or no animal products. 1 serving of nuts a day, 39% decreases cardiovascular mortality and 27% decreases all causes of mortality. Instead of oil, eat nuts. I always use salad dressing as a good example because everybody knows salad dressing to be vinegar and oil, and then from there, different stuff. So instead of oil, puree up some walnuts, raw walnuts. Now you got a whole food healthy fat source. The oil is in the nuts and it's going to have all the fibers and everything else it's supposed to have. When you isolate the oil and actually use just the oil and you take everything else out of the nut or the avocado or the olive or whatever, that's where you run into problems. Let's see, next. When you intellectually learn how good, healthy, anti-cancerous foods are, it makes it easier to eat foods you don't like, and the more you eat them, the more you'll end up liking them. So what he's saying here, my interpretation of this, is that, like right now, you're learning about all this stuff. For me personally, and for people that, give a damn, it makes it easy to eat healthy because you're learning, oh shit, I can't eat these sugars, highly processed foods that absorb quickly into the bloodstream. I can't do these things that cause excessive insulin spikes in my blood because of all these horrible effects it has. So yeah, I want to stay away from that. And then there's these other foods like beans, slowly digesting. They have a residual effect over other meals, and so on and so forth. G-bombs I went over earlier, and you learn what they do. It just makes it so much easier to do the right thing. That's what he's saying there. The Nutritarian Prescription by Dr. Joel Fuhrman, MD. So now we're really going to get into the solution. 1 large salad. He always says make the salad the main course, not a side dish, the main course, full of dark leafy greens. 1 ounce of raw nuts and seeds, 1/2 cup of beans or legumes, a large serving of steamed greens or raw or lightly steamed, mushrooms or onions, and 3 fresh fruits. Nutritarian versus a standard diet. So you know the difference here. Nutritarian diet is vegetable based, lots of greens, beans, seeds, nuts, fruits, oil used sparingly if at all, animal products 0 to 3 times a week, focused on nutrient-dense calories. Remember the micronutrients because they have 0 calories. Standard diet is grain-based, lots of dairy and meat, supply of a major caloric load, animal products 2 to 4 times a day, focused on nutrient-poor calories. I wonder which one is going to live a longer, healthier, more vibrant life. The power to change. Is unhealthy eating really a choice if the information about its dangers are hidden? In my opinion, it's still a choice, because to be curious or not curious is a choice. Like, I've made plenty of videos about curiosity. I think just about anything starts with being curious. Like, if you're going to get healthy, if you're going to make better money, if you're going to solve problems, it really starts with the curiosity. You're asking questions, you're making less statements. And if you're curious, it doesn't matter if the media does not report on this. You're going to go out there, you're going to find the answers, you're going to find live feeds like this, you're going to find people like Dr. Fuhrman, who I'm reading the notes from his lecture right now. You're going to find the right books, classes, conferences, seminars, teachers, whatever, the right people to be around. If you're curious, asking questions with a sincere desire to help yourself, it doesn't matter how hard the media sucks at their job. You know what I'm saying? You're going to find it. And there's a lot of people that aren't curious, and they're the ones that are going to live a life by default in more ways than one. Financial default, health defaults. And they're the ones that are the most powerful marketing tool to companies that profit by harming us. And that is, the most powerful marketing tool is willful consumer ignorance. You can say it's a complete lack of curiosity. So to answer his question, the power to change. Is unhealthy eating really a choice if the information about its dangers are hidden? It's still a choice. You're either curious enough to find the answers with or without the media, with or without your current circle of friends. If you're curious, you give a damn, you're going to find the answers, period. Anyone agree or disagree with that? Is healthy eating really a choice if there is no access to affordable, healthy food? I still say that's a choice, because if you can't afford it, that's the main thing people say, I can't afford it. The organic food typically costs a little bit more. Well, there is no law in this country preventing you from creating your own opportunity. If you're not already a billionaire, let's face it, everything is stacked and rigged against you. However, you can create your own opportunity. That's what I did. I started out, no income. I got plenty of videos about that, and I don't want to turn this video into that, but to answer the doctor's question, even if you're broke and the information isn't there, that does not stop you from being curious and creating your own opportunity. You can get into home businesses that anybody can afford to get into, even if you have no money. There's ways to raise money without having any money. It doesn't take money to make money, and you can build $1 million business, $100,000, but you can solve any problem that you want if you're curious enough, and you're going to create your own opportunity. But if you're going to rely on the system to create that opportunity for you, well, then you're screwed, because it is rigged against you if you're not already a billionaire. So that's an important nuance to make, right? So is healthy eating really a choice if there is not access to affordable, healthy food? Yes, because then you change your situation by being curious and creating opportunity for yourself, like I did, like very few other people have, and most people won't, even though everybody could. It's really heartbreaking that it's so available to create our own opportunities, but most people just won't. Moving right along. Transforming America's inner cities into zones of nutritional excellence. I would love to see that. And maybe someday that will be a reality. But in the meantime, and even after that happens, if and when that happens, we still have to create opportunity for ourselves, self-educate, self-care, be curious, and go for it. The mindset of a champion. Determination. I can do anything that I set my mind to. Bam. Initiative. The most important step is the first one. And then see it through. Perseverance. Steady persistence in adhering to a course of action. That's where most people lose it, because they're not finishers. Repetition. Repetition creates muscle memory, which becomes second nature. And correct attitude. Champions are prepared to work for the results over time, could take months or years. Goes aligned with perseverance. And what I said earlier, most people are non-starters, and most starters are non-finishers. They're quitters. Very few people are starters and finishers. So he's basically saying, be a starter, be a finisher. Just by default alone, that puts you ahead of about probably 95% of the population. Easily. Something cute he's kind of described in terms of different belts awarded to martial arts. He said, levels to reach a vibrant life. At the white belt, you feel ill after healthy eating, toxic hunger, comfort foods, blah, blah, blah. Then you advance to a yellow belt. Snack only occasionally, rarely overeat, enjoying a healthy eating, difficult to resist junk food still. Then a brown belt, frequently feel true hunger, rarely overeats, still enjoy occasional unhealthy foods. And then a black belt. This is where we want to get to. Mostly eats only when hungry. Lost emotional attachment to comfort foods. Ooh, that's a good one. You know you're a black belt when you've lost emotional attachment to comfort foods. And you dislike salt and heavy spices, feel ill after unhealthy eating. So let's go through that process and be a black belt. Okay, so the next major lecturer that I took notes on is Dr. Gabriel Cousens. Now, this guy I've never seen before. Fuhrman I've seen several times. He's great every time. Dr. Cousens blew my mind. He's another medical doctor. He's also a rabbi, and he's deeply involved in meditations. Like, he's serious about it. I've never seen anybody so serious about meditations. And he's older, and he's very wise. He's a higher vibration than just being smart. He's very wise. This is a man operating on one of the highest vibrations I've ever seen or felt in my life. So I hope I get to attend one of his lectures again sometime. And he lives in the mountains of Arizona. So Dr. Gabriel Cousens. Cousens spelled C-O-U-S-E-N-S, medical doctor. And he lectured on the cure for diabetes. The cure for diabetes. So here we go. The first thing he said, love yourself enough to heal yourself. I posted that on my Facebook recently. Love yourself enough to heal yourself. I would also extend that into saying love yourself enough to be curious, to stop making statements and to ask more questions so that you can find the answers, because the media is not going to report it, and you may not be circled by a group of friends that are really into this either. So love yourself enough to be curious and love yourself enough to heal yourself. The greatest motivation is loving yourself enough to heal yourself. The plan only works if you love yourself enough to heal yourself. The most powerful healing modality is live foods. In other words, live, living, raw foods. When health is absent, wisdom cannot reveal itself. Art cannot manifest, strength cannot fight, wealth becomes useless, and intelligence cannot be applied. Periphalus, Greek physician, 335 to 280 BC. That's a great quote. Especially the wealth becomes useless. That's why in my video, a lot of my videos, I'm talking about the marriage of health and wealth. So it's a beautiful marriage. They both work together. Very useful. And that's why I'm always inviting you into my thing that I've been doing online, my health and wealth business, which I'll get into that later too. Health and wealth, beautiful combination. Add health and wealth to our lives and make money, better money, adding health and wealth to our lives. Solves a lot of problems, and you get so many more options, and you basically become a more free human being and a more positive, impactful free human being when you have health and wealth. Otherwise, wealth is useless. Moving right along with Dr. Cousens. If you get diabetes and you don't reverse it, in 15 years approximately, you really start to degenerate physically, sexually, mentally, spiritually. Diabetes is the #1 cause of kidney problems. It's the #1 cause of adult onset blindness. #1 cause of kidney failure is diabetes. 1 cause of surgical amputations, a high cause of surgical amputations, is diabetes. The legally blind can see again. That's right. In his clinic, he has helped legally blind be able to see again just by curing them of their diabetes. Amazing, right? That's pretty damn exciting, and you're probably not going to get that with your current doctor, or the medical community will not even recognize that, but Dr. Cousens, MD, will. Diabetes. There is no cure for there is no cure for diabetes according to the New York Times and the American Diabetic Association. So the ADA, the American Diabetes Association, are they a governmental organization? I'm not sure. Anyway, the organization that has tasked itself with helping people with diabetes and finding a cure for it, they will not recognize that people are being healed from it completely, and they're still saying that there's no cure for it. So the ADA, and I've always felt this way, one big terrible scam, and there's consequences to this scam. That is, people live and die and suffer with diabetes. So they're among the worst of the worst. I'm sure most of the people in it are very nice people and they mean well, they just don't know any better. But the leadership of the ADA, I have to believe they have to know. So they would be among the worst of the worst people. I also feel that way about the pharmaceutical drug industry. It's the leadership at the top that are among the worst of the worst people. The workers below them probably mean well, they just don't know any better. You know what I mean? If you go the wrong direction, you will end up in the wrong place. Diabetes for kids used to be about 4%. Now it's up to 75% in our kids, depending on locations such as Arkansas or the Bible Belt, the southern deep-fried double-wide states. That's outrageous, going from 4% to 75% in our kids. So we're failing our kids. Civilized communities are supposed to protect their children. We are killing them. But it goes back to most of us just don't really know any better. At least I think so. So we just have to know, and we have to talk about it. We have to get it out there. We have to show the proof. People like Dr. Cousins, he's not throwing these stats out there. He's doing it, and he tracks it. He's a scientist. He's a researcher. He's a medical doctor. He's tracking it. Diabetes is a form of accelerated aging. It's an accelerated chronic degeneration aging process, or diabetes degenerative syndrome, that is primarily a genetic and epigenetic toxic downgrade, resulting in leptin, insulin, and other hormonal and metabolic dysregulations, including protein, lipid, and carbohydrate imbalances. The leptin, by the way, that's a new word thrown out. I didn't type this down, but what I remember is a hormone that tells the brain to stop eating because you're full. So if you have diabetes, it blocks the leptin receptors, which means your brain isn't getting the signal that you're full, so you keep eating. He abbreviates this with CDDS. So when I say CDDS, I'm talking about, where am I talking about it? Chronic degeneration diabetes syndrome, I think is what it is. So the CDDS also involves a chronic inflammatory accelerated aging process. Diabetes isn't about blood sugar, and it affects the whole body. It's bigger than a disease or a blood sugar problem. Diabetes is a syndrome, and blood sugar is a symptom of that. This degenerative process arises from a diet primarily high in sugar, including both simple and complex carbs, trans fatty acids, processed and junk foods, and cooked animal fat and protein. It is made worse from a diet low in fiber combined with a lifestyle of stress, obesity, lack of exercise, lack of sleep, general toxic exposure, including pesticides, herbicides, heavy metals, and environmental toxins. It is a diet with vitamins, minerals, and antioxidant deficiencies. The chronic diabetes degeneration syndrome, CDDS, is associated with insulin and or leptin resistance. It is complicated by toxic degenerative epigenetic memory programs. This toxic metabolic memory must be turned off to stop an ongoing cardiovascular degenerative program and pro-inflammatory cytokine activation from adipose. And then I missed the last sentence. I actually typed that out because I couldn't keep up with how fast he was talking. Sorry about that. That was a mouthful to read, and I still don't totally understand it. Zero sugar. Stevia and xylitol, he says, are fine. You can sweeten things with stevia and xylitol. Apparently it doesn't raise glucose, and if it doesn't raise glucose, it's not going to trigger excessive secretions of insulin. Optimum fasting blood sugar is between 70 and 85. I believe the ADA says get it below 110. I guess that's a half-truth. I never hear them talking about 70 to 85. So optimum fasting blood sugar is 70 to 85. This level you burn fat and reverse the process of diabetes. Above 85, insulin production turns on and starts storing fat. That's hugely important for non-diabetics alike. People who watch 19 hours of TV a week have a 150% increase in getting diabetes. That's going to be a Facebook post at some point, just so you know. People who watch 19 hours a week of TV have a 150% increase in getting diabetes. Had to read that twice. Animal fat is a major cause, is a factor for type 2 diabetes. Fat toxicity is a major factor in the cause of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Animal fat inside the cell interferes with the reaction of insulin. Insulin resistance is closely associated with the accumulation of fat within our muscle cells. In a study, women fed meat only once per week. Pretty moderate, once a week eating meat. Women fed meat only once per week had a 400% increase in diabetes. Once a week. It's basically saying you got to go all in. To make this work, you have to go all in 100%. When there is no compromise, they found the reversal rate of diabetes in their clients is 100%. Tell that to your medical doctor. I'd imagine they'll say you're just outright lying, but this is a doctor. He tracks this stuff. He's not making it up. And it's incredible. It's a statement he makes where he's either telling the truth or he's lying. Diabetes is a disease of fat toxicity. At first, the pancreas pumps out more and more insulin, trying to overcome fat-induced insulin resistance in the muscles and in the liver. Before diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, there is a long silent scream from the liver. As fat builds up in the liver, and the liver becomes insulin resistant. Wow, the liver becomes insulin resistant. I don't even remember typing that out, but that's incredible. The islet or beta cells, which produce insulin in the pancreas, are killed off by the animal fat buildup. Insulin production starts to fail. Insulin resistance combined with a failing pancreas goes to type 2 diabetes. Fish meat is the most damaging food to the beta cells, even more so than red meat. And what are we always told? Eat fish, not red meat. Well, don't eat both, but if you're going to eat one or the other from what I'm reading here, don't eat fish as it pertains to diabetes. Fish meat is the most damaging food to the beta cells, even more so than red meat. There is an 8% increase in risk for every 1.7 ounces of daily meat consumption. So again, it's a very small little bit of meat and it increases the risk. Learn the word glycotoxic. Glycotoxic. I don't remember why I typed that out. Maybe he spoke too fast and I couldn't read it or type it out. I don't know. Babies being fed formula instead of natural mother's breast milk are at an increase for diabetes from the glycotoxic chemical they put in formula. So there you go. I guess I got a little bit out that I typed. They've known about this meat thing for over 100 years. They still tell us to eat meat. This is not a safe diet. They know it. People who eat meat and... I'm sorry, gotta make a typo correction here. I'll reread this. People who eat less meat and more plant-based whole food have less diabetes. Sugar, animal fat, meat proteins are the biggest 3 things that trigger diabetes. Good to know. Sugar, animal fat, and meat proteins are the biggest 3 things that trigger diabetes. 1 egg per week increases risk of diabetes in men and women by 76%. 1 egg a day double all causes of mortality in those with diabetes. So an egg a week, pretty low moderation. It goes back to, if you want to be cured at 100% cure rate, according to Dr. Cousins, you have to go all in. Not even 1 serving of meat or eggs a week. Not even that. It's pretty amazing. Antibiotics, even just a little bit, increases the risk to diabetes. What are people prescribed at the doctors all the time? Antibiotics. They are all toxic to the pancreas and the microbiome. The microbiome is that it's a coating that's supposed to be in the inner lining of the lower intestines. And eating beans on a regular basis puts that coating there so things flow through smoothly and empties out into the toilet as it should. And it has a lot of other health benefits too. I just don't remember what they were, and I don't think I was typing fast enough to get them down. Okay. Picking up where I left off. Okay, 1/4 pound of beef raises blood sugar about as much as 1/4 pound of straight sugar. That was fascinating to me. I remember typing that down because we're told the opposite, and we believe the opposite is true. But it's the opposite that's true. 1/4 pound of beef raises blood sugar about as much as 1/4 pound of straight sugar. Damn. Something the media, again, is not going to report on. Statins greatly increase risk of diabetes, and diabetics are commonly prescribed statins by their doctor to deal with cholesterol. So you see what Dr. Fuhrman was saying, that doctors and drugs are the #1 causes of leading death in America. Doctors and how they prescribe drugs, and they don't address our nutrient deficiencies in our diet. The #1 cause of death in America. So I'm reading all this stuff, and it really backs that up, man. Unquestionably, statins greatly increase risk of diabetes, and diabetics are commonly prescribed statins by their doctors to deal with cholesterol. Instead of dealing with their diet to deal with cholesterol, they're given statins. People that already have diabetes, and Jesus, yeah, goes back to self-education, self-care, taking responsibility, being curious enough to find this out because the media doesn't report on it. So we really have to start with curiosity. Treatment by Dr. Cousins. Ooh, let's get on with this. Oh, this is a good opener. Crimes against wisdom that lead to chronic diabetes degenerative syndrome. These crimes against wisdom that leads to this problem are as follows. High sugar is a crime against wisdom. High fructose, fructose, not just high fructose, but fructose, greater than 25 grams daily is a crime against wisdom. Animal fat is a crime against wisdom. Meat consumption, a crime against wisdom. Obesity, a crime against wisdom. Soft drink consumption, high insulin indexes. Television programming is a crime against wisdom. Antibiotics, statin use, vaccines, agrochemicals, cigarettes, low-fiber diets, stress, crimes against wisdom. Lack of exercise, wheat, soy, excitotoxins, a crime against wisdom. EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, are crimes against wisdom, which are like cell phones, the radiation put out by cell phones, smartphones, smart meters, and so forth. Sleep deprivation, radiation, psychotropic drugs, depression, all crimes against wisdom that lead to chronic diabetes degenerative syndrome. The Tree of Life 21-day program. So this is Dr. Cousins' main thing that he uses to cure people of diabetes type 2, and some with type 1 too for that matter, inside of 3 weeks. So check this out. And you can Google this too. You can find Dr. Cousins' Tree of Life 21-day program. You can look more about it. He's got a beautiful website, a blog site. He's got recipes. He's got all kinds of stuff. So check him out. Tree of Life 21-day program. #1, green juice fast. #2, 0-point process. #3, doesn't Weight Watchers use a point system? #3, conscious eating course for anti-diabetogenic foods and a phase 1.0 diet. #5, herbs, minerals, and vitamins. #6, enzymes, powerful proteolytic enzymes, serapeptase, can't pronounce it. #7, meditation. 8, yoga. 9, culture of life, lifestyle, and rainbow green vegan raw cuisine. Rainbow green cuisine phase 1.0, mostly vegetables, green sprouts, green leafy vegetables, green juices, sea vegetables like kelp, noro, dulse, sea palm, sea lettuce, non-sweet fruits like tomatoes, avocados, cucumber, red bell peppers, lemons, limes, fats, hemp, hemp, olive, sesame, almond, coconut, avocado, nuts and seeds, superfoods like blue-green algae, green powders, spirulina, chlorella, marine phytoplankton, wheatgrass juice, fermented foods, cultured seed milk, milk spelled M-Y-L-K, fermented foods, cultured seed M-Y-L-K milk, sauerkraut, apple cider vinegar, soy-free miso, sweetener, stevia and xylitol, sprouted legumes, teas and spices and herbs, herbal caffeine-free tea, all herbs and spices, cinnamon is a big one. Rainbow Green Cuisine Phase 1.5 additions to Phase 1.0. Veggies, raw, whole, carrots, beets, hard squash, fruits, grapefruit, raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, cherries, bilberries, cranberries, green apples, condiments and sweeteners, mesquite, meal, raw, carob, superfoods, pomegranate, goji berries, bee pollen, maca root, grains, quinoa, buckwheat, millet, amaranth, teff, germinated foods, don't know what that is, germinated foods, I wonder if that's a typo. Cultured coconut meat, cultured seed cheese, CHEEZE, no dairy. The basic healing synergy for diabetes types 1 and 2. It's 1 and 2. Number 1, the avoidance of all carbohydrates except leafy greens, non-starchy and fibrous vegetables, sprouts and sea vegetables in the diet. This is a 25 to 35% carbohydrate, slightly ketogenic diet, which significantly decreases insulin secretion and also decreases leptin secretion. I'm going to read that one more time because that's important. The avoidance of all carbohydrates except leafy greens, non-starchy and fibrous vegetables, sprouts and sea vegetables in the diet. This is a 25 to 35% carbohydrate, slightly ketogenic diet, which significantly decreases insulin secretion and also decreases leptin secretion. Optimal macronutrient ratios. Remember, macronutrients have calories, and the more you eat, the more it speeds up the aging process. 25 to 45% raw plant fat, 10 to 20% raw plant protein, 25 to 35% raw plant carbohydrates, 25 to 45% complex carbohydrate is recommended for non-diabetics. The power of a 100% live food, plant source only organic diet in the healing of diabetes. The use of live food decreases para-inflammation by 5-fold in 3 or 4 weeks. Use of concentrated proteolytic enzymes, serrapeptase, to decrease inflammation, paraductal scarring, and beta cell scarring and destruction. Significant weight loss on the 25 to 35% carbohydrate diet, 18 pounds in 21 days, with some losing up to 25 pounds in 1 week and 48 pounds in 3 weeks. A 24% drop in total cholesterol, and also a drop in LDL by 54%. Plant source only diet, as described in Genesis 1:29, itself had a moderate effect, as highlighted by the 12-study meta-analysis of 1,259,000 people who showed a 35 to 50% less risk for vegetarians versus omnivores for diabetics. The use of all organic food, which minimizes negative effects of pesticides and herbicides and heavy metals on insulin resistance and pancreas function. Moderate exercise, adequate sleep, the healing effects of meditation, individualizing the diet type and phase type for optimal healing effect, and long-term 90% compliance. The overall holistic effect of this generally healthy 25 to 45% fat intake diet, including a drop in total cholesterol to a safe cardioprotective, mentally protective level of 159 and a cardioprotective triglyceride count of 82. The use of all plant-based fats except for trans fats. Loving yourself enough to want to heal yourself, and use of a psycho-spiritual approaches to activate this self-love. So green juice fast, 0-point process, rainbow green cuisine phase, most vegetables, greens, sprouts, green leafy vegetables, green juices, sea vegetables, kelp, nori, dulse, sea palm, sea lettuce, any age, 3 weeks, doesn't matter how old you are, any age at 3 weeks, a person can be healed from diabetes and off medications, according to Dr. Cousens. Wow, that's amazing. His website, by the way, is drcousensonlinestore.com. That's DRCOUSENS onlinestore.com. Bilberries, blueberries, and green apples are 3 safe fruits that don't seem to cause problems. Bilberries, blueberries, and green apples. Otherwise, more than 1 serving of fruit a day is a problem. So other fruits, just 1 serving. But when it comes to bilberries, blueberries, and green apples, you can have multiple servings, and they don't seem to cause a problem. A little side note he made, somebody asked a question about dogs. He said dogs are actually vegetarians. Cats need animal products, dogs don't. Blood sugar is not the problem, it's the symptom. And he ended with a cool quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Society is always taken by surprise by any new example of common sense. So those are all the notes that I took. That took quite a long time. Someone said that the video was choppy earlier. I don't know, so maybe I'll redo this at another time and just make a video recording instead of a live feed if that's the case. And I'll probably do more videos in the future of some of this stuff broken down into simple little micro sections, because there's so many great things in here. So this could result in dozens more smaller videos. But here's the big video, the big picture. Google Health, Healing, Happiness, Las Vegas. Attend a future event. They're fun. I go there. Maybe we'll see each other. And also my website, tomberkenmeyer.com, just like it's spelled here on social media, Tom Berkenmeyer. And for those of you that love health and money, and you like that marriage I talked about earlier about health and money, and how useful wealth is when you have your health versus how useless it is when you don't have your health. If you like that whole concept and you want to make better money, add more health and wealth to your life and the lives of people around us, then private message me, and I'll show you what I've been up to for over a decade now. So I'm rock solid, obviously. I'm not going anywhere with that. And if it turns you on, we'll do it. And I hope you got some value from this. I know you did. If you were paying attention to that, you got a lot of value. And again, I'm not sharing any of this to undermine your doctor or other healthcare professional. You need to take personal responsibility for your own health. And all of what I was reading came from other people anyway, so I'm just sharing with you what I've learned, the notes. I literally read the notes that I took from Dr. Cousins and Dr. Fuhrman. And you can Google them and find their websites as well, and whatever can help you out, okay? So bye for now, everybody. Make it a beautiful day, and feel free to drop more comments in here too, and I will read them. Mwah! Hello, my friends. So there was more speakers to speak about, and the first time I read these notes, I just I missed these, and I thought something seemed off or short, and I was right. I didn't think much of it, or at least not enough to do something about it. But then I eventually discovered these notes. So let me continue, because there's so many good things, and I'll be stitching the two videos together to appear as one, or if you're watching the recording after the fact, then maybe you're already watching that video in the future, or the present. Hi Aretha, Carla, nice to see you guys, and everyone else chiming in. So let's continue with these notes. The next speaker I heard from, after Dr. Cousins is where we left off. Hi Carla, hi Joanna, is Dr. Len Horowitz. He's got a website right off the bat, 528radio.com. That's 528radio.com. And my website, tomberkenmeyer.com. Start with that too, just like it's spelled here on social media, tomberkenmeyer.com. Hi Joanna, nice to see you. Okay, so with Dr. Len Horowitz, these are my notes I took from this dude. 528radio.com. 528 frequency is the frequency of love, and the frequency of love is linked to the heart of everything. That's the only note I took from him. So again, his website is 528radio.com. The next speaker was Shannon Ray. Really good lecture she gave. Hers was more philosophical than anything, but really good stuff, because as you know, if you don't, I'll tell you, how you think affects what you do, and what you do pretty much shapes your life. So it all starts down to our thoughts. And our personal philosophy is what we believe, how we hold it to be true, and how it affects what we do or what we don't do. So what we're doing, our actions, is a symptom of our philosophy. So really, to solve just about all problems, it's really, you go to the source, not the cause, I'm sorry. You go to the source, which is the cause, which is personal philosophy, each and every time. And most of the time people are not focused on the source. They're not refining their personal philosophies, and they wonder why nothing changes or gets any better. It's because they're not focused on the root problem, which is the personal philosophy. It's like health, you know? People go after the symptoms instead of the root cause. It's the same thing. So personal philosophy. Shannon Ray was more philosophical, which I love. Okay, so here's the notes I took from Shannon Ray. The level of power you will receive in your life will happen always in correlation to the amount of ownership you take in your life. The time to take real ownership of your life is when you are brought to your knees. If you want to live through it, you have to own it. Your greatest opportunity for power to solving problems is when you are in the worst of all shitstorms. You ask yourself how you can own it. Self-imposed limitations is any time you hitch yourself to an external factor that you depend on. I'm going to read that one again because that's huge. Self-imposed limitations is any time you hitch yourself to an external factor that you depend on. Great examples of that, sidebar note for me, by the way, and I'm sure you can think of tons of them. It would be like, I don't have any money because the economy is bad, my boss isn't generous, somebody broke a promise. Those are external forces, and those are self-imposed limitations. And that, again, that goes back to one's personal philosophy. They don't need a more generous boss, they don't need a better economy. And I'll agree those things are terrible, but that's not the difference maker or the game changer. It's the personal philosophy so that you find a better way. The same thing with health. Somebody might say they're unhealthy because of their environment. Well, maybe they can change their environment, but that goes back to their personal philosophy and how it affects what they do. Okay, so going right along from the sidebar and continuing with Shannon Ray. She gave us a neat little homework assignment, so I'll share it with you, and you can do this too if you want. She said to eliminate the word should from your vocabulary and replace it with could. Then write the word I choose. This changes you from a judgment into a choice, and a choice to a commitment. So that's pretty cool. I'm actually going to try that out. A commitment is ownership. So it's a transition and an evolution to ownership. You can do and create whatever you want by leveraging what you have control over. You have control over how you think. Again, it always goes back to personal philosophy. That's where the control is. It's not these external factors where people break promises and the boss isn't nice and the economy is rigged against you, which it totally is. It's never those things. It's always your personal philosophy. That's where your control is. So you can do and create whatever you want by leveraging what you have control over and always owning your life in every moment. We control our own thoughts, choices, beliefs, experiences, emotions, results, perspectives, and we control our actions. Are you creating and writing and framing your own story, or are you letting others write and frame your story? For a few days, here's another homework assignment she gave us, and this is a really good one too. For a few days, consciously write down your unfolding story once per every hour. This will make you become aware of who is writing your story, so you can transform into the author of your own story and establishing ownership of your own life instead of other people framing and creating your story for you. That's a good, worthwhile, amazingly good, worthwhile transition and evolution. So the next speaker, Shannon Ray, was great. I recommend her. By the way, her name is spelled S-H-A-N-N-O-N, common spelling. Her last name is R-A-E, R-A-E. So if you want to look her up on Google or whatever, go for it. She didn't give us a website that, at least that I made a note over. The next speaker was Brenda Cobb. I've seen her speak a couple times. She's awesome. The first time I heard her speak, she was talking about her institute, livingfoodsinstitute.com out of Atlanta, Georgia. They have an amazing track record of healing people from lots of different cancers. I remember a testimonial that really sticks out from her clinic is they were treating somebody who had, I want to say over 100 tumors. It was some crazy number, dozens and dozens of tumors, cancerous, and without any medical treatment, just nature, a lot of juicing wheatgrass and other things. There's more to it than that, but they were able to heal this person of all their tumors, cancers, and shrink all the cancers. It's incredible. So Brenda Cobb, I got the pleasure of seeing speak again and took some good notes. So from Brenda Cobb, you don't know for sure if you are going to be here tomorrow or even by the end of today, so we tend to miss this present moment. Knowing something is more powerful than believing something. Little sidebar note here. One of my biggest pet peeves is when somebody starts a sentence with, I believe ... and they state something factual. That's not a belief. It's not an opinion. It's not subject to somebody's different beliefs. It either is or it isn't when it's something objective. So that's my interpretation of that, and it reminds me of that pet peeve. When you know something, you don't have to start with my opinion or I believe. You can have an opinion or something subjective to say after the fact based on that objectivity, but knowing something is more powerful than believing something because it is what it is. And this is probably more prevalent when people talk about politics. People say, I believe ... or my opinion is ... and it's basically a false fact. and no objectivity at all. It seems to be infectious, mostly in politics for whatever reason. People lose their minds. But knowing something is more powerful than believing something. Anger and unforgiveness stores its toxins in the liver and can cause cirrhosis to the liver, even if you've never had a drop of alcohol in your life. Fear is stored in the kidneys and can cause kidney problems. Even if you eat clean all the time, how you think can overpower and give you disease anyway. And there's plenty of stories of people who do go, say, eat a clean, maybe a raw food, vegan diet or whatever, and they end up with cancer anyway, and you come to find out that they're stressed out to here, they're in a marriage that's killing them. And that's what I have a friend, Avita Rampart. She wrote the book Bliss of Cancer. Quite a catchy title, right? Well, the first thing that she did when she got her diagnosis is she divorced her husband. It's kind of funny, but it's serious. And that in conjunction with going to a plant-based whole food, she's a flat-out vegan actually, a vegan diet and cleanses and coffee enemas and all sorts of things like that. She was able to heal herself of the cancer, but the first thing that she did was divorce her husband, I shit you not. And she got rid of all the stress from her life, but she was also doing the vegan diet, coffee enemas, lots of juicing and fasting and cleanses, and she got rid of all of her cancers. She had a very severe, aggressive form of ovarian cancer. The doctors wanted to operate, remove it. She said, no, this took years. Let me figure this out on my own. She did the research. She figured it out. She cleaned up her thoughts first and healed herself. It was great. So check her out, called The Bliss of Cancer by Avita Rampart. I actually flew out to San Diego from Wisconsin once just to interview her in person because her story was so cool. So if you want that video, let me know. I'll comment with the link to that video. That was a few years ago or so. It's been a while now. But man, it turned out to be a beautiful video, very helpful video. So let me know if you want it. I'll send it to you. So she went on to say, you have to heal emotionally to heal physically. So that's the point of all of that. And she said some things I didn't really know here, and very specific stuff like fear is stored in the kidneys, and anger and forgiveness releases toxins that's stored in the liver. So you can get these different kidney and liver diseases even if you eat totally clean and you never drink. So you have to change your thoughts. It's the most powerful part. It overrides food. It overpowers everything else. You can eat totally clean. How you think can override everything else. So if you're going to heal, you have to heal emotionally so that you can heal physically. Otherwise, you know, all the physical stuff that you're doing could be completely negated just by how you think. Make sense? Okay, so moving right along. Hey Jody, nice to see you. Can't wait to hang out with you again, whenever that's going to be. Sometimes a bad thing can be the best thing that happens if you wake up and take ownership. Make a different choice than in the past. So that was Brenda Cobb, livingfoodinstitute.com. Amazing speaker, amazing woman. The next person I heard speak, this is the last one, by the way, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. His name is Will Tucker. Pretty incredible dude. He's been a vegan for 40 years. I mean, 40 years ago, that wasn't even really a thing. I can't imagine what it would have been like 40 years ago. So Will Tucker, his lecture was on protein propaganda. So let's get on with it. Animal agriculture is the great Trojan horse. All of us are born into our culture as wounded by way of living in a herding culture done on a massive scale that genetically engineers, tortures, and kills other animals. We eat meals of pain and suffering and misery and torture, physical toxins and metaphysical toxins. The World Peace Diet is a diet that is plant-based. So this is a different angle that he's offering us. It's incredibly fascinating. And his solution is the World Peace Diet. My friend Jody, who's here, she does something called Peace Begins on Your Plate. There's a lot of truth to that. So let me continue with his notes. He's shared a lot of good stuff, and thankfully I was able to write pretty fast. Intelligence is the ability and a desire to make relevant connections. When we feed our kids animal products, we don't talk about what it is, where it came from, how it affects others, how it's harvested. Most parents are well-meaningful to their kids, but even though they mean well, most parents have not made the connections either, and they're in effect harming their kids. So his whole viewpoint is we are born wounded because of how we create a demand for more misery, torture, pain, suffering in this hurting culture. So by default, we are born emotionally and physically wounded by well-meaningful parents who also are uneducated and have not connected the dots and are unaware of what they're doing. That's his whole premise. So moving right along. A little sidebar note here. Let's see here. I made this little note. I actually wrote this down. It made me think of it. Writing a resume, for a job. Writing a resume and applying for a job, or going for that job promotion and that job pay raise, is like devolving yourself down to a commodity, much like what we do to farm animals. Going for that job, the resume, so on and so forth, is like devolving yourself down into a commodity. My personal opinion. So moving right along with Will Tucker's notes. The core of animal agriculture, this is a tough one to swallow. The core of animal agriculture is the raping of the female animals and then breaking the bond of that mother and child bond and repeating that over and over and over again. Wow. Our wallets is what makes this happen. And that circles back to how by default we're born into as wounded babies, we are born into this culture because we're not aware of this stuff. We haven't exercised real intelligence of connecting the dots between how we spend our money and what it demands. And how we spend our money today demands pain, suffering, misery, torture, rape, and that bond breakage between mother and child of these farm animals. That's the reality of our situation today. So our wallets is what makes this happen. Our wallet is the real voting ballot. This means we have the power to create a revolution, not by voting for politicians, though that's important too, don't get me wrong, but our real wallet, the real voting ballot, is what we spend our money for. It's the same thing as saying, give me more of that. That's where my money's going. We can picket and protest all day long. If our money does not match our mouths, we're clowns. And big business knows that. They don't care about protests. They only care about where our money is going. You want to make a change? That has to be the message. And our messaging so far on that front sucks so hard that the money has not changed enough to create a revolution. Just so you are aware. So we need to get better with our messaging on the real power, that is our money and how we spend it. Animal agriculture is a war against nature, and ecosystems are collapsing. Species are becoming extinct. Sidebar note, we are a cancer on the planet and other species. That's what he's describing here. That's my interpretation of that. Animal agriculture is a war against nature, and ecosystems are collapsing. Species are becoming extinct because of us. 100 years ago, humans took up only 1% of the biomass of the earth. Today we take up 98% of the biomass. Can you say unsustainable in all capital letters? In only a 100-year time span. 100 years ago we took up only 1% of the earth's biomass. 100 years later we go from 1% to 98% of the earth's biomass. Holy shit. I'll make another sidebar note about that in a second. We are running out of food and water. This is literal. We are running out of food and water. We are receiving the problems we inflicted on the earth. It's coming back to us now. When the animals and the earth's resources are gone, we are gone. And the rich are screwed, and you are screwed when we all come to realize that we can't eat money because that's all we've got left is money. We're dead. We are stealing the earth from all animals. We are also stealing it from our kids and the future generations. And we're doing this so stupidly because it's hemorrhaging back, or boomeranging hemorrhaging. We do this so stupidly because it is boomeranging back to us. We are reaping what we are sowing, maybe times 10, not in exact quantities. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio. It's more like a 10-to-1 ratio. We are reaping what we are sowing. So what was the sidebar note that I was going to make just now? I don't remember what it was, so I guess I'll have to get back to that. For every one person who switches to a plant-based diet, You can feed 15 people, and 30 people can drink water. Just for one person, every one person, 15 people can eat, and 30 people can drink water. I mean, if that's not reason enough to go more plant-based, holy shit. And the media and politicians are not talking about this. 1 billion people in the world, this is my little sidebar note from something I remember learning earlier, but I'm connecting the dots because that's real intelligent, connecting relevant dots. There's 1 billion people in the world who are literally starving to death, and most of them are kids. So for every one person who switches to a plant-based diet in the West, like, one of us, we can save 15 of those lives, 30 of those lives can have water, 15 can eat food. Isn't that just incredible? We can solve this problem along with the collapsing ecosystems just with this singular change of switching to a plant-based diet. That one singular change of switching to a plant-based diet, it's not just switching to a plant-based diet and has this 1-to-1 ratio. No, it's 1 to 15 people now can eat and 30 can have clean drinking water. And not only that, but what I was saying earlier about the real ballot box and the real votes that really count, that really do affect change, are money. If we're eating a plant-based diet, obviously we're spending money differently, so that's going to create a change in business as usual. It's going to have a whole new, better business as usual. The power of community can do it. Most people are just, another little sidebar note, the power of community can do it. So here's what he means by that. My interpretation of it, and this is true because you can observe this objectively anywhere. Most people do what most people do because most people do it, because most people don't really have a mind of their own. Most people are not free-thinking people. That's just the way that it is. So it's the power of community, peer pressure, when it becomes uncool or unpopular, or there's a social stigma to eating too much meat, or maybe in some cases any meat and dairy and so forth, then most people are going to be on a plant-based whole food diet. So it's the power of community, that support, where everyone's doing it, that kind of thing. Because most people are just obediently following social norms, right? Most people are very obediently following the status quo, business as usual, even if it's hurting them and killing them. People will do it. They'll follow the status quo. Parents will unintentionally wound their children just for the sake of not breaking social societal norms. So it's the power of community that's really going to do it, but there needs to be enough early adapters, we'll call it, people who are outside of the box thinkers. When there's enough of those and we do a better job with our messaging, more people will follow, and eventually this will be a social norm. And gosh, the health of the planet, us, our kids, species will be saved. There's no question about it. So I'll continue reading here. People are starving because most of the food we are growing is being fed to animals. Eating a plant-based allows more than enough food for everybody, so we have a surplus. So a lot of people don't realize this, but if you fly in an airplane, or even if you drive down county roads, you see cornfield after cornfield after cornfield, or soybean field after soybean field. Most of that is not going towards human consumption. I don't remember what the number was, but something ridiculous like 80 or 90. I think it was closer to 90% of all of that goes to feeding livestock, and then we eat the livestock. So imagine if people switch to a plant-based diet, and now we have all those fields and we're growing goji berries and acai berries and wheatgrass and all these other amazing superfoods, the same landmass, but now it's going to feed people. A very small percentile of it is going to feed livestock because we just don't need that much livestock anymore. And so now we have a sustainable planet, and now we don't have to have 1 billion people, mostly kids, that are starving to death. So we have a lot of, even though most of us, I believe, are well-meaning, we're just not educated, and we haven't exercised real intelligence by connecting those relevant dots. Well-meaningful or not, the end result is we in our culture, we are creating this misery, this destruction, this hurting environment of raping and breaking the bonds of mother-child and repeat over and over again. We're creating that, and we're wounding our kids by default in that whole nonsensical business as usual status quo scheme. So we need to get educated, because I do believe if we all knew about this, we could connect these dots and we would make a change like yesterday. And that revolution would be created literally overnight. because we'd be voting differently with our dollars, which is the real ballot box that does make a change. Hi, Dawn. And the last little note that I made, this is a little sidebar note. Tomorrow's wars will be over food and water shortages. And actually, that's already happening. There are skirmishes and battles happening right now over food and water shortages. In fact, in some places in Africa, governments are storing water because they're literally running out. And so there's gangs in these places that break into these facilities, steal the water. Now this water is a hot commodity and they can sell it for high dollar amounts as people are starving to death and people are dehydrating because of water shortages. So that's just beginning in some places. It's happening right now. As far as full-scale wars happening, I mean, that's going to be the next step up somewhere, the next couple steps somewhere down the road. That will happen if we keep going down this path. As you know, the trajectory right now is less food, less water each and every year, but the population keeps growing. So there's a bigger demand placed on for that food and water while the food and water supplies are shrinking. So that's unsustainable. And eventually, there will be full-scale wars over food and water. And so we have to switch to a plant-based whole food diet. Or the alternative is there's going to be massive scale water and food wars over these shortages, and probably a whole host of other problems, the domino effect stemming from there. So that concludes all my notes between the two videos, which I will stitch together into one continuous video, and I'm sure I'll put it on my tomberkenmeyer.com website at some point too. tomberkenmeyer.com, just like it's spelled here on social media. Hope you guys got a lot out of this. Go back and watch it again, take notes, and share it with people and talk about it and improve our messaging about our wallets being the real mechanisms of change and how we vote with our dollars, and that's the real ballot box, man. Because we need to do a better job at connecting those dots and exercising real intelligence by connecting those relevant dots, okay? So thanks, everybody. And if you want to talk about any of your goals that you have, whether they're financial goals or health goals or wealth goals or messaging goals of your own messages, feel free to hit me up. And I'll talk to you later. Bye for now. Mwah!